So choice of working hours में through trading off करनी पड़ेगी, that how much consumption he has to give up for getting the more free time. And preference ਉਹਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੀ preference देखांगे, ਉਹਦੀ choice ਲਈ ਕੀ करेंगे, preference देखांगे. Preference is how much he values, how much a person values two goods related to each other. कितनी ਉਹ value करता वा, कितनी किहदी value करता. लाइक ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਜੇ ਉਹ 15 ਹੈ ਨਾ ਇੱਥੇ, ਤੇ ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਦੋਵਾਂ 'ਚ ਸੇਮ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਆ, ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਦਿਸ ਵਨ. But like in that case, like in case of A and B, where there is in first case they have like more consumption but less free time, and in second case more free time and less consumption, what would he choose? So in these type of comparison we will find these, like he is indifferent means he is equally satisfied with either outcome. Like he has the same utility, same utility मिले. Utility basically is the amount of benefit a person receives from a good. So किसी भी good तो उन्हें जड़ा मतलब benefit हो रहा है, so इन्हें तो same benefit हो रहा है, उन्हों की choose करूँगा. Like same utility from A and D, means he is indifferent. And we know that he prefers A to B, so B provides lower utility than A or D. So in this model, we can think of utility as a measure of Green's overall living standard or the benefits, taking into account that he cares about free time as well as consumption. A systematic way to graph Green's preferences would be to start by plotting all of combination that he get the same point. इदा इनो systematic way किया. Green की preference जानन दा would be to start by plotting all of the combination that give him the same utility. सारे combination जिन्होंने same utility provide कर रहे हैं, like A and D. So we could ask another question. Imagine that you have the combination at A, like 15 hours of free time with this consumption. How much consumption in euros would you be willing to sacrifice for an extra hour of free time? Suppose that after you between A and D, 16 hours. Difference की च A and D, A and E च, E and F च, E and F, and so on, which means he is indifferent between all the combination from A and D. Either which. So the combination in the table are plotted like this and joined together to form a downward sloping line. Okay, so here, like in this combination, this. So all these points, they are like downward sloping lines, which are indifferent. Like he is indifferent in all these combinations. These points are joined together to form an indifference curve. So when we join all these points, like all the sloping lines, so it becomes an indifference curve. And join together to form a downward sloping line. So it topic on the indifference curve. So what is indifference curve? These are the set of options that provide a person with the same benefit. So indifference curve basically these are options, set of options जेडे के same benefit provide करते हैं person को, like same utility. So which shows that all the combinations that provide equal utility or equal satisfaction. Of the three curves drawn in figure 3.4, the one through A gives higher utility than one. The curve through C gives the lowest utility of the three. So, जो downward sloping line जाती है ना, सो प्रेफरेंस ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਵੇਖਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਬੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਲੈਸ ਯੂਟਿਲਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਵਾ ਤੇ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਬੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਮੋਰ ਯੂਟਿਲਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਵਾ ਓਕੇ ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੋਰ ਯੂਟ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਬੈਨੀਫਿਟ ਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੋਗਾ ਆਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ So, the curves we have drawn capture our typical assumptions about people's preferences, but we do good. Indifference curve में कुछ assumptions ने. In this model of Green's preferences, the goods are consumption, spending, and so what are the assumptions? So we will read about the assumptions. Like first is indifferent curve slopes downward due to trade-off. So पहली assumption है कि indifference curve slope. We already understand the concept of indifference curve. So indifference curve basically here set of options that provide person with same utility, okay, same benefit. So there are some assumptions. First is indifference curves ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ slope ਆ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ downward ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ downwards because of trade off. So if you are indifferent between two combination, the combination that has more of one good must have less of other goods. ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੋ goods ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ indifferent ਹੋ, like if you are indifferent between two combinations, so ਜਿਹੜੇ combination ਚ ਇੱਕ good ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਦੂਜੇ ਚ obviously ਇੱਕ ਘੱਟ ਹੋਊਗੀ, okay, so ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ slope ਆ ਉਹ downward ਆ. So if you have a question this like why the slope of indifference curves is usually downwards, so you can answer this like if you are indifferent between two combination, so if any of the combination has one good, more of one good, it must have less of other good, which is because of trade-off. Second is higher indifference curve corresponds to ਜਿਹੜੇ indifference curve higher ne, higher indifference curves correspond to higher utility level. As we move away from the origin, we move to combination with more of both goods. So ਜਿਹੜਾ indifference curve higher ਹੋਣ ਕੇ means ਉਹ ਕੀ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ utility level ਕਿੰਨੇ higher ਨੇ, it has high utility level. Third is indifference curves are usually smooth. Small changes in the amount of goods does not cause big jumps in utility. Fourth is indifference curve do not cross. This is the main question. Indifference curve cross क्यों नहीं करते? So we have the rule, ਇੱਥੇ ਸਾਡਾ rule ਕੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ higher indifference curve ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ corresponds to higher utility level. So because it would contradict the principle, contradict the principle. ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ principle ਕੀ ਹੈ, ਸਾਡਾ rule ਕੀ ਹੈ that higher indifference curve corresponds to higher utility level. So like crossing indifference curve, this thing contradicts the principle. One principle contradict कर दिया that each curve represent a different level of utility. कि हर curve के कोल different level है utility का. The higher the curve, जितना higher curve होगा the higher the utility. Only higher utility. And point on a higher curve must always represent more utility than the point on the lower curve. So why the indifference curve do not cross with each other? According to the rule that higher indifference curves corresponds to higher utility levels, because it would contradict this principle that each curve represent a different kind of utility level. So higher the curve, higher the utility level. So that's why it does not cross. Fifth is indifference curve become flatter as we move to the right. So जो सी right में move करते हो flat हो जाता. So क्यों as we move less of one good, जे सी एक good तो घट move करांगे, like the trade off to give up even more of it becomes greater. वो that trade off उन होल को हाँ ज़्यादा हो चुका. Next we have two terms, that is marginal rate of substitution MRS and marginal rate of substitution. Budget constraint mean MRS, marginal rate of substitution. So to understand the last property in this list, we plot Green's indifference curves again in figure 3.5. If he is at A with 15 hours of free time and 550, the last assumption is that the indifference curve flat ke hui jante towards as we move towards the right. So like if it is at A with 15 hours of free time and 540 consumption, he would be willing to sacrifice 94 of consumption for an extra hour of free. So if he gets like 15 hours of free time with 540 consumption, so वो अपनी 94 consumption give up कर सकता वा to acquire 1 hour of free time, like 1 more hour of free time. So taking him at E, जरा नु E ते लगेगा. Remember, he is indifferent between A and E. We say that his marginal rate of substitution between consumption and free time ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ marginal rate of substitution ਤੋਂ 94 ਮਤਲਬ marginal rate of substitution ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਚੀਜ਼ give up ਕੀਤੀ ਆ, it is the reduction in his level of consumption the level of reduction ਆ that would keep Green's utility constant, benefit constant ਰਹੂਗਾ following an R increase. So like in this diagram, he is at A, इथों E पे आ जाऊगा. So what is marginal? The trade-off that a person is willing, इथे willing word आंदा जेड़ा अपनी will दे नाल करदा, willing to make between two goods. So the what is marginal rate of substitution? The trade-off that a person is willing to make between two goods at any point. We have drawn the indifference curves as becoming gradually flatter because it seems reasonable to assume that the more free time and less consumption he has, the less willing he will be to sacrifice further consumption in return for free time. So we have drawn the indifference curve as becoming gradually flatter हो जाता है because it seems reasonably to assume करना कि more free time, जितना ज़्यादा free time होगा देखो तो less consumption जितनी होगी, मतलब जितना ज़्यादा free time होगा तो जितनी घट the less willing he will be to sacrifice further consumption. उतना less willing क्योंकि consumption जितनी घटेगी उतनी less उन्हों की करूँगा sacrifice करूँगा in return for free time. So his MRS will be lower. उधर जरा willing to trade off वाला MRS घट जाएगा. So 3.5 which we have calculated the MRS at each combination along in difference. When Cream has more free time and less consumption, MRS amount of spending he would give up to get an extra hour of free time gradually falls. The MRS correspond to the slope of indifference curve, and it falls as we move towards right along the okay. किसी भी पॉइंट पे MRS की इक्वल होता है एब्सोल्यूट वैल्यू ऑफ द स्लोप ऑफ द इंडिफरेंस कर्व. जो गुड ए घट या गुड बी receive more. The more free time and less consumption he has, the less willing he will be to sacrifice further consumption in return to free time. MRS की हो जाएगा घट हो जाएगा. This is like this one question आया सीगा. When trying to understand why people make the choices that they do, two terms, utility the indifference curve. Discuss each term. What are they modeling and why? So utility is the amount of benefit a person receives. Amount of benefit a person receives from a good, estimated by how much they would be willing to pay. So इन्होंने पूछा कि discuss each of these terms, what they are modeling and why they matter, क्यों matter करते. So utility is basically the amount of benefit a person receives from a good. Estimate कितना करेंगे अपन utility, how much they would be willing to pay to receive it, कि उसको कितना pay करेंगे उस चीज़ नू लेने वास्ते. And indifference curve the set of options that provides a person with the same benefit. वो options ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ same benefit ਦਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ person ਨੂੰ, ਇਹਦੇ ਚ ਕੀ ਹੋਊਗਾ trade off. The curve reflects the choice between two goods the person desires, where having more of one means having less of the other. When trying to understand why people make the choices that they do, two terms are utility and indifference. Discuss the term utility and indifference curve, what they are modeling and why they matter. So higher indifference curve ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ high utility level. Marginal rate of substitution is the amount of something that person, it's a trade-off that a person is willing to make between two goods. At any point, MRS is equal to absolute value of the slope of the indifference curve. The less of A good that something. ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਘੱਟ good A ਹੋਵੇ that someone has, the more of good B they must receive to accept the trade-off. I'm not understanding this concept, yaar. ਜਿੰਨੀ ਘੱਟ ਇੱਕ good ਹੋਊਗੀ, the more of good B they must receive to receive ਕਰਨਗੇ. ਦੂਜੀ obviously ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ receive ਕਰਨਗੇ they to accept the trade-off. At your point the consumption as we move down to the indifference curve, MRS ਘਟਦਾ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ consumption ਘਟਦੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, indifference ਵੀ flat ਹੁੰਦਾ ਜਾਊਗਾ. Next is the feasible set. Can I have some water? Call Jyotina. Call Carla. is the feasible set. ਜਿਹਦੇ ਚ ਆਉਣਾ budget constraint. We know from Cream's preferences that he would like both his consumption spending and his free time to be as high as possible. But not all combinations of consumption and free time available to him. His choice is limited to what he could achieve by working for a wage of 30. So he faces a dilemma. The more free time he takes, je zyada free time lenda, the less consumption he can have. In other words, free time has an opportunity cost. To get more free time, Cream has to forego the opportunity of higher consumption. So the total amount of consumption he can have depend on the number of hours. So कितनी consumption होगी depend करती है कितने घंटे काम करता कितने घंटे free time मिलता. Remember that if he works for H hours and W the wage and income नहीं है. So if he takes T hours of free time, he will work for ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਨਕਮ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੇਜ ਇਨਟੂ ਆਰ ਆ. ਮਤਲਬ ਇਨਕਮ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਿਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਘੰਟੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ. ਵਰਕਿੰਗ ਆਵਰਸ ਤੇ ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ. ਲਾਈਕ ਇਫ ਯੂ ਵਰਕ ਮੋਰ you will get more income. But here the case is ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ consumption ਆ, that how much you have to, like how much expenditure you have to spend on your consumer goods. So it depend ਕਰਦੀ ਆ how much ਇਸ case ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ free time. ਜਿੰਨਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ free time ਲਓਗੇ ਉਨੀ ਘੱਟ consumption ਹੋਊਗੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ, ਉਨੀ ਘੱਟ consumption spending ਆ, ਤੇ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਘੱਟ free time ਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ. like so ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟੀ free time ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਰਕ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ 24 ਚੋਂ free time ਬਾਕੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ working hour, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ. So the maximum level of consumption is C. Consumption, the maximum is W, means wage. Working hours matlab this one 24 minus T. So we call this as is पूरी equation ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਵਾਂਗੇ budget constraint. This is the budget constraint because it shows what he can afford to buy. ਇਹ ਕੀ show ਕਰਦੀ equation ਕਿੰਨਾ afford ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਵਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਖਰੀਦਣ ਲਈ. Figure 3.6 shows the two goods that Cream cares about: hours of free time on the horizontal and consumption on the vertical. In the table in the 3.6, we have calculated the free time corresponding to a given level of working hours ranging from 0 to 16. So these are the hour of work, this free time, consumption, which is 0. जो 2 घंटे काम करता वा free time like इन्ना वा 24 चों ਉਹਦੀ ਅੱਧੀ consumption ਆ. ਹੁਣ ਦੇਖੋ ਜਿਉਂ ਇਹ working hours ਵਧਣ ਦੇ ਉਹਦਾ free time ਘਟ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਦੀ consumption ਵੱਧ ਰਹੀ ਆ. So when we plot the points shown in figure, we get a downward sloping straight line. This is the graph of the budget constraint. The equation of the budget constraint is like this. Equation की consumption wage कितनी है 30 है, 24 minus T. So जो graph ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਮਿਲੋਗੇ downward sloping straight line ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਮਿਲੂਗੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਵੇਜ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ constant ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ change ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ. The budget constant in figure 3.6 is the mirror image of the relationship between income and hours of work. It is a straight line with a constant slope corresponding to the wage, but it slopes downward, which means that slope is negative. At any point on the line, if free time increases by 1 hour, the maximum possible consumption cut दी है, इस तरह के downward. So which combination shows which combination of consumption and free time has feasible choices for Cream. ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਦੱਸਦੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਬੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਦਾ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਬਲ ਚੋਇਸ ਆ ਕਰੀਮ ਦੀ ਐਂਡ ਵਿਚ ਆਰ ਨਾਟ। ਨਨ ਆਫ ਦਾ ਪੁਆਇੰਟਸ that lie above the budget constraint are feasible। ਹੁਣ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਕੰਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਆ, ਬਜਟ ਕਨਸਟ੍ਰੇਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਬਵ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਨੇ, ਮਤਲਬ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ, none of the points that lie above the budget constraint are feasible। None of the points that lie above constant, budget constant to na। For example, point C represent ਹੁਣ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ point C ਆ, point C ਕੀ represent ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਵਾ 12 hour of working time। point C बारह घंटे फ्री टाइम this is not feasible because if he takes 12 hours of free time his earning will only be 360। कमाई ਉਹਦੀ 360 ਹੋਣੀ, like ਪਰ ਉਹਦੀ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਦੇਖੋ, ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇਖੋ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ 12 ਘੰਟੇ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਵਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਆ 360, like ਉਹਦੀ earning ਕਿੰਨੀ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਕਮਾਉਂਦਾ 360 ਆ ਤੇ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਉਹਦੀ 450 ਆ। ਸੋ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਬਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਜਟ ਕਨਸਟੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਆ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਾ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਬਲ। ਆਲ ਦ ਪੁਆਇੰਟਸ ਦੈਟ ਲਾਈ ਔਨ ਔਰ ਬਿਲੋ ਦ ਬਜਟ ਕਨਸਟੈਂਟ ਇਨ ਦ ਸ਼ੇਡਡ ਏਰੀਆ ਆ ਫਿਜ਼ੀਬਲ ਹੈ। ਫॉर एग्जांपल ਕਰੀਮ could choose point D with 18 hours of free time and 70 of consumption। From what we know about his preferences, we would not expect him to do so because he would then consume less than he earned। And remember that he only cares about his consumption and free time, so he has no other use of his earning। By choosing a combination below the constant cream would be giving up something that is freely available to him। He could obtain more consumption without sacrificing any free time। He could obtain more consumption, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ consumption ਹੋਊਗੀ ਇਸ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਮਤਲਬ sacrifice ਕੀਤੇ free time, or have more free time without reducing consumption। He could choose any point in this set, कोई भी point choose कर सकता if he wish to do so। The budget constant is the upper boundary of the feasible set, which is also called the feasible frontier। ये क्वेश्चन आंदा the feasible set का equation that represent all combination of goods and services one could acquire। Slope of budget constant negative और कदों जो free time ज़्यादा ते consumption घट है। आगे आला MRT। Another way to describe the trade-off is to say that the feasible frontier shows the marginal rate of transformation, the rate at which Kareem can transform free time into consumption। ਜਿਹਦੇ ਚੋਂ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਸਫਾਰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। Like when Kareem's wage is 30 per hour, the rate at which he can transform free time into consumption is 30 per hour. If the wage were to increase 35, the budget constant would become steeper with the slope of minus 35 and his marginal rate of 35. So we have now identified two trades of marginal rate of substitution as explained in the previous section, and one is measure the trade offer that Kareem is willing to give up, like willing to make between free time. Trade off that a person is willing to make between two goods, like here is the free time and the consumption. In constant, this measures the trade-off that Kareem is constrained to make by feasible frontier. ਹੁਣ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਆਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ, a feasible frontier. Decision making and scarcity. MRT is the trade-off that Kareem is constant to make by feasible frontier. We have described Kareem's preferences for different combination of consumption and free time and worked out which combination of feasible for him. The first step is knowledge decision making worked out the previous to do. So the preference, the feasible set together to determine the combination of consumption and free time that will be chosen. Brings together Kareem's physical frontier and the indifference current. इंडिफरेंस करब की दसदा सीगा Kareem की प्रेफर करता कितना और सेम मतलब इंडिफरेंस करो तो पता लगता है कि यूटिलिटी हम किधर से ज़्यादा मिल रही थी किधर से कट and the slope shows the trade off that he is willing to make. So यहाँ slope दसदा है कि trade off होता है. The feasible frontier is the constraint on his choice and his slope shows the trade off he is constrained to make. Shows that four indifference curves are indifference curves C1, C2, okay, represent the higher level of utility because it is the furthest away from the origin. ਹੁਣ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜਿਉਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੰਡੀਫਰੈਂਸ ਕਰਵ ਲਾਈਕ origin ਤੋਂ ਦੂਰ ਆ ਉਹ ਹਾਇਰ ਯੂਟਿਲਿਟੀ ਲੈਵਲ ਦੱਸਦਾ ਵਾ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਇੰਡੀਫਰੈਂਸ ਕਰਵ ਨੂੰ assumption ਤੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ। Away from the reason we move to combination with more of both words. No combination of consumption, कोई combination का free time on is feasible, कोई feasible नहीं है। However, because the whole indifference curve lies outside the physical set, suppose Kareem considered choosing a combination somewhere in the physical set on IC1. The steps on physical indifference curve like this are. ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਚੂਜ਼ ਕਰਦਾ ਵਾ ਸਮਵਟ IC1 ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਕੋਈ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਚੂਜ਼ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ, okay, shows that how he can increase his utility by moving to points on higher indifference curves until he reaches a physical choice that maximizes his utility. ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ on the indifference curve IC1 on combination between A and B, ਇਹਦੇ ਚ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਵੀ A ਤੇ B ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਆ combinations ਨੇ ਸਾਰੇ feasible ਨੇ because they lie in the feasible set. Suppose Kareem chooses one of these combination choose ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦਾ, ਔਰ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ all combination in the area between IC1 and the feasible frontier are feasible and higher and give a higher utility level than combination on IC1 because a movement to C would increase Kareem's utility. क्योंकि वो combination IC2 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਉਹਦੀ utility ਵਧਾਵਾਂਗੇ। ये देखो moving from IC1 to point C on IC2 increases Kareem's utility. Switching from B to D, और जो B to D देते switch करता would raise his utility by an equivalent amount, equal to the utility बढ़ी, like B point somewhat like this. 12 ਜਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਉਹ E ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਜਾਂਦਾ maximize ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਆਪਣੀ utility point E ਤੇ where his indifference curve is tangent to the physical frontier. They touch but do not cross. The model predicts that Kareem will choose to spend 7 hours each day working and have any to spend on consumption. Physical frontier where the indifference curve and the physical frontier have the same slope. ਇਹਦੇ ਚ ਹੁੰਦਾ point E ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਹਾਇਰ ਯੂਟਿਲਿਟੀ ਆ, highest attainable indifference curve at E. ਇਹ ਉਹ point ਹੈ on the physical frontier where the indifference curve the physical frontier the same slope ਆ. Now remember that the slope represent the two trade-off facing. The slope of the indifference curve represent MRS. The slope of the frontier curve and ਹੁਣ indifference curve ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ slope ਉਹ MRS ਦੱਸਦੀ ਆ. It is the trade-off he is willing to make between free time and the slope ਜਿਹੜੀ frontier ਦੀ ਉਹ ਦੱਸਦੀ MRT. That it is a trade-off that he is constrained to make between free time because it is not possible to go beyond the and if you go like this. cream achieves the highest possible utility where the two trade-off just balance E. The best combination of consumption and free time is at the point where the marginal rate of transformation is equal. So best ਜਿਹੜਾ combination ਆ consumption ਦਾ ਉਹ ਉੱਥੇ ਆ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਮੰਨਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ slope ਆ slope of indifference curve ਉਹ ਕਿਹਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਦੀ ਆ MRS ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ represent ਕਰਦੀ ਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ trade off willing to make ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ slope ਆ feasible frontier ਦੀ ਉਹ ਕਿਹਨੂੰ represent ਕਰਦੀ MRT ਨੂੰ ਮਤਲਬ the trade off is constrained to make so ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ E point ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਹਾਈਐਸਟ ਯੂਟਿਲਿਟੀ ਮਿਲੂਗੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਦੋਵੇਂ ਸਲੋਪਸ ਟੱਚ ਕਰ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੂੰ ਸੋ ਉਹ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਇਹ ਉਹ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆ ਜਿੱਥੇ MRS ਕਿਹਦੇ ਇਕੁਅਲ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ MRT ਦੇ ਸੋ ਕਰੀਮ achieves the highest possible utility where the two trade off ਜਿੱਥੇ ਬੈਲੈਂਸ ਹੋ ਗਏ highest utility ਉਹਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਮਿਲੂਗੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ two ਜਿਹੜੇ trade off ਨੇ ਦੋਨੋਂ trade offs ਕੀ ਹੋ ਗਏ balance हो गए balance कदों होंगे जो दोनों एक दूसरे equal हो गए his best combination of consumption and free time is at point where the marginal rate of transformation is equal to marginal rate of substitution MRS slope of indifference curve and MRT slope of is at the point shown in figure 3.7 at B and D B the D the amount of consumption Kareem is willing to trade for an hour of free time is greater than the amount he would B ਤੇ D point ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਦੇਖੋ free time ਇੰਨਾ B point ਤੇ consumption ਇੰਨੀ ਹੈ B ਤੇ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੁਣ at point B and D the amount of consumption Kareem is willing ਕਿੰਨੀ amount of consumption Kareem will ਕਰੂਗਾ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ B point and D point ਤੇ ਦੇਖੋ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਆ ਇੱਥੇ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਆ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਇੰਨੀ ਆ ਹੁਣ B ਤੇ B ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਤੇ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਉਹ ਬਿਲ ਕਰੂਗਾ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਕਰੂਗਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਨੂੰ ਵਧਾਉਣ 'ਚ A ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਤੇ ਵੀ A ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਤੇ MRS ਘੱਟ ਹੈ ਤੇ MRT ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵਾ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਕਰੂਗਾ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਟੂ ਡਿਕੋ ਆਪਣਾ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਘਟਾਊਗਾ ਐਂਡ E ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ MRS ਦੇ ਇਕੁਅਲ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ constant choice problem A decision maker pursues an object or utility subject to content. In our example, both free time and consumption are scarce for cream because free time and consumption are goods में cream value करता. Each has an opportunity cost. More of one means less of other. In constant large problem, the solution is the choice that best satisfies the individual object. If we assume the utility maximizing cream's goal, then if we assume MRS is equal to MRT. So a trade-off where to find the market happen. MRS is the amount of consumption in euros that cream is willing to trade off for an hour of work. So slope ये कितने मिलेगा? Indifference कर अपनी slope दे. The slope of budget content which is equal in absolute value to the wage. And we sometimes say that MRS is equal to the slope of the indifference curve. And the MRT is equal to slope of the frontier. But MRS and MRT are two positive numbers and the slopes are negative. Strictly speaking, we mean that MRS and MRT are equal to the slopes in absolute values. Okay. This is the MRS is equal to the absolute value of the slope of indifference curve. Same MRT is equal to the absolute value of the slope of the physical frontier. MRS the MRT the question सीधा साधा. Consumer would like both their consumption spending and free time to be as high as possible, but their choice is limited to what they could achieve by working for an wage of X. They face a dilemma: more free time equals consumption. Free time has an opportunity cost. To get more free time, consumption cost more opportunity. Budget, the total amount of consumption a consumer can have depends on the number of hours. Budget constant के the total amount of consumption a consumer can have depend on the number of hours of free time they make. The budget constant shows here this choice at the range of free time option. Last topic इस chapter था income and substitution effect on hours of free time. Babes, baby, ਕੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ? I'm on my last topic, babes. Then I'll come and join you. Then I'll come and join you. When we use the model of constraint choice to analyze the effect of a wage rise, as for a career, we find that living standards represented by utility in the model always rise. imagine that you are planning how to spend the 10-week summer break. ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ 10 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਦੀ summer break ਆਈ ਆ, like 2.5 months ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ before your next year at college. You have the opportunity to work in a local shop where you would be able to be paid $90 per day. But you also want to have time to meet friends, take a holiday and study for a year's course. How many days should you work during this break? We will suppose that, like Cream, you care about two girls. ਹੁਣ ਸਾਨੂੰ example ਦਿੱਤੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ, ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੀ ਆਈ ਆ, ਸਮਰ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਆਈ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਜਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਵਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਇੰਨਾ ਪਰ ਡੇ, ਪਰ ਡੇ ਇੰਨਾ ਪੇਮੈਂਟ ਹੋਣੀ, ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਲਾਈਕ ਫਰੈਂਡਸ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਹੁਣ ਕਰੀਮ ਦੇ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੋ ਗੁਡਸ ਨੇ, ਲਾਈਕ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਦੈਟ ਯੂ ਕੈਨ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਫਰੋਮ ਯਰ ਅਰਨਿੰਗ, ਇੱਕ ਆ ਕੰਜ਼ੰਪਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਅਰਨਿੰਗਸ ਤੋਂ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਐਂਡ ਦ ਨੰਬਰ ਆਫ ਡੇਜ਼ ਆਫ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ, ਤੇ ਦੂਜੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ that you will have. You are making a plan for the whole summer break, so we will focus on the total amount of consumption and free time rather than daily and wage day averages. You have a total of 70 days in which you can either work on that to 70 days. ਹੁਣ ਇਹਨਾਂ 70 ਦਿਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਟਾਈਮ। If W is the daily wage, ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ daily wage ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ W, and D is the days of free time. ਇੱਥੇ D ਕੀ ਹੈ, free times ਨੇ during the break. Then you ਤੁਸੀਂ working hours ਕੀ ਨੇ, 70 minus D, and you maximize the level of consumption. Budget constraint ਕੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ, W is equal to R 70 minus D. So figure shows that your budget constraint when the daily wage is, on daily wage ਇੱਥੇ ਮੰਨ ਲਓ 90 and your feasible set. The slope of the budget constraint corresponds to the wage. Budget constraint की ਜਿਹੜੀ slope है wage पे depend करती है. For each additional free day, total consumption must decrease. ਹੁਣ एक free day ਤੁਸੀਂ add करोगे consumption घट जूगी 90. The area under the budget constraint is under feasible set. Your problem is very similar to Cream's problem. The marginal rate at which you can transform days of free time, no marginal rate ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ transform ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ days of free time into consumption, which is also the opportunity cost of free time, is constant and the equal is your wage. So it is like MRT ਕਿਹਦੇ ਪਰ 90. What will you choose? That depends on your preferences and they will depend in turn on your situation. For example, if you are able to live rent free with your family, income will be less important to you than to a student who has to pay for accommodation, and you will place a relatively high value on free time. If part of your earning will be needed to pay for consumption during the next semester at college, you will be less willing to substitute free time for a consumption. So you prefer choice of free time and consumption. Your preferred choice of free time and consumption will be combination of physical frontier that is on the higher possible indifference curve. We have drawn indifference curve of the type typical shapes for steps and preferred. So days of free days ne ka consumption. So with these indifference curve, your ideal plan for the break would be at point A with 34 free days and earning of income. At this point, MRS is equal to the absolute value of the slope of the budget constraint, which is the wage 90. A point B. If your indifference curve have the same shape as the ones in figure, then you would choose point A with income. Like Cream, you are balancing two trades of MRS, the rate at which you are willing to swap days of free time for additional consumption, and your MRT, the rate at which you are able to transfer free time. Your utility maximizing combination of consumption. While considering this decision, you receive an an email. Mysterious benefit would like to give you 1000 to spend, yes you like. So इस डिसीजन ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੰਨ ਲਓ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਈਮੇਲ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਸਟੀਰੀਅਸ ਬੈਨੀਫੈਕਟਰ would like to give you ਜਿੱਦਾਂ $1,000 ਦਊਗਾ to spend as you like. All you have to do is to provide your banking details. You realize that once that this will affect your plan. The new situation is now figured. The situation. For each level of free time, your total income earning plus the mysterious gift is in higher than before. So the budget constant is shifted upward by another physical set expand हो गया. Your budget हम constant की हो गया. जब you पहला किसी 90 70 minus D plus आ गया 1000. हम expand हो गया तो B पे चल गया. The extra income of inna does not change your opportunity cost of time. But extra ਜਿਹੜੀ income ਉਹਨੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ opportunity cost ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਅਸਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਾਇਆ. Each hour of free time still reduces your consumption by ਹੁਣ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਵੀ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ free hour ਮਤਲਬ ਵਧਾਓਗੇ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ consumption ਘਟਾਊਗਾ ਹੀ by 90. Your new ideal choice is that B with 39 days of free days. B is the point at inna where the MRS is equal to 90. With the indifference curve shown in this diagram, your response to the extra income is not simply to spend enough more. You increase consumption by less than enough and you take some extra free time. The student with different preferences might not choose to increase their free time. Income effect is the fact that an increase in income has on an individual's demand for a good because it expands the physical set of purchase. Income effect, the effect of additional income. Income effect here. Additional income, the effect basically effect of additional income on the choice of free time. But free time the choice there. Additional income, the P effect there. Your income effect shown in its positive. Extra income raises the level of free time you will choose. For the student, income effect is 0. You assume that for most goods the income effect will be either positive or 0, but not negative. If your income increase, you would not choose to have less of something than you valued. Unearned income. So it only has an income effect. MRT has not changed. There is no increase incentive to work, so there is no substitution effect. Substitution effect basically in the opportunity cost of a free day is still 90. Opportunity cost really a free day 90 है, and you have no reason to substitute. कोई reason नहीं है उसकी consumption to substitute kind of for free time. Rise your income for each level of free time. We can afford to have more of the goods we value, we will want. If we can afford to have more of the goods, ਅਸੀਂ afford ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ goods ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ value ਕਰਦੇ we will want, ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ. Income effect of a wage rise make ਜਿਹੜਾ income effect a wage Baby, baby. Okay, guys. So now I have to make dinner for my family. So I'm going. I'll see you soon. So stay healthy, guys. Take care.